Oh boy. So, I mean, he's not above, you know, attacking someone at their lowest or at their most depleted, right? Honor doesn't really play a part in his approach. It's all about getting, you know, results. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see the contrast. But again, you know, he's also being tested. He's a part of this challenge that, you know, kind of has a bunch of these people in there, or a part of it. You know, Gon, Killua, Knuckle, Palm, and Shoot. So let's see. Oh God. This might be the most exhausted I've ever seen the boys. That's also a good thing. They're being pushed. Ooh, look at this. Physically, they've grown quite a bit. Quite muscular looking now. He's holding back, isn't he? Interesting choice of dialogue. That's a great shot. Okay, backs are turned. Oh boy. Oh. This is his issue, isn't it? Indecisive. Stuck in his head. He's not able to pull the trigger. Oh God, he's shaking. Now, is this due to them just being children, or is this like a larger issue? I think it might be a larger, ongoing issue for him. Ooh. Oh, that's blunt, man. That's not quite the term I was about to, you know, think about. Again, indecisive is the one that came to head. Ooh, almost immediately. Ooh. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Hey, that's right. It's so casual. I mean, so casual that I didn't even notice. That's a big question though. Could he actually use his full strength? That applies to Shoot and Knuckle and Palm as well. The timing is really quite deliberate as well. Oh, I love these shots of her. Beautiful. Beautifully detailed. Interesting. Yeah, yeah. Okay, there's confirmation. How about that? Yeah. Yeah. Look at Kill. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Seen that before. Him and Mito-san. How's she going to react to this? Yep, there is. I remember he just kind of holds that note and then Mito-san hugs him. Oh no. Yeah. Bisky, you know, she picked up on it. Okay. The misty forests, eh? Oh. That's a great shot. Picked apart one by one by one. You'll get your chance soon enough. There it is. Are they giving him enough of a challenge, though? That's the big question. Yeah, hold on, my friend. Yeah, but you know, there's been moments of him kind of thinking to himself. Speak of the devil. Oh. Yeah. It's good to see them still playing a part. You already have it. Oh god. It's really strange imagery to look at, isn't it? Yeah, super casual. Cookie-chan? Oh. Yeah. She has a complete understanding for that. Wow, these shots are beautiful though, huh? Oh, he'll notice. He'll notice. Solid. Rock solid. Okay. Yeah, I'm still thinking. Whoa. Wow. Whoa. Beautiful. Oh. The score, though. Yes. FILMBuFF. Oh. A bit of elegance to the king's court. In character, isn't it? Oh god, is that her Nen? It is Kite, isn't it? God damn. Yeah, he's a puppet. Puppet on strings, specifically. But she is kind of bored. Interesting. This is so beautiful. I love this. Some entrance. Yuppie. No. Tell me the full name. Yuppie. I mean, it's easy. Oh. Montituyupi. I like that better. I'm gonna use that. Montituyupi. That's quite the look. God damn. Yeah, he is more of like a brute. At least physically. From the look of it. Yeah, I'm not sure about that, boys. Ooh. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, they did say he'd be a match for Kite. My god, look at this. Our move. Look at this. Yeah, I spoke of it earlier. I've seen that a few times now. Interesting. Ooh. Yeah, there's... Ah. It was an interesting sequence there. It almost kind of looked like something cut out there. I think it did. And then, let's talk about it. Yeah, he's good. Okay, maybe it's going to address the title of the episode now. It is, I mean... At the most basic level, it takes quite a bit of time to charge up. Yeah. I mean, in Greed Island, in the dodgeball match, it's a different specific scenario, but... 2. First one is quite clear. The second one... Oh. Beautiful stuff. Oh. Yeah, look at this. Oh, interesting. Yeah, you know, like I said, there's been these moments of him just kind of thinking to himself. You know, the camera kind of focuses on him as, you know, Nov and Morel kind of, you know, speak to each other. I mean, Nov did say a little bit earlier that, you know, the chairman's always been a gambler. Okay, so the chairman has spoken, right? And, you know, this right here is really quite critical because this is not him speaking to Nov or Morel or Moral, right? He's not speaking to any of them. This is his own internal monologue. This is, you know, his complete understanding of this situation at the moment, right? You know, I mentioned throughout the episode as well, and, you know, I've picked up on these moments, perhaps over the span of the last few episodes as well. You know, the camera kind of lingers on the chairman, on Netero. You know, it's happened on a few occasions, at least twice at the least, you know, at least maybe 3 times, maybe 4 times even. I'd say at least 3 times. I'm not sure if it happened 4 times, but it happened enough, right? It happened enough or enough times that it's really quite noticeable, right? And it's usually after, you know, Morale or Nov or, you know, the combination of the two are kind of, you know, speaking of the plan of action, and expectations and just, you know, how to approach this and just how, I don't know, clear cut it all kind of feels at this moment, right? You see Morel at one point in this episode actually believes, or he actually feels that this all feels a bit too easy, right? It's just far too easy at the moment. And, you know, it is far too easy at the moment. And that's simply because, you know, the caliber of ants that they are targeting or coming across at this point are just not the types that can really, you know, stand up to any of them, right? Let alone the chairman himself inside of that space, the pocket dimension. And the funny thing is they appear to get connection in and out of it because, they're in contact, right? It's a cell phone. I mean, it could be, it might not be just a normal cell phone, right, per se, but it could be something a bit more special, a bit more high tech, right? You just kind of have to assume it has to be, because, I'm not sure about the logistics of, getting a connection out of that place, that dimension, that, I don't know, it's a really unique and cool place and just ability that Nov does have. But yeah, I felt that it's really quite clear that, something's been on his mind, on the chairman's mind, throughout these conversations, right? A lot of times it'll be Nov or Morel kind of finishing up, the plan of action, just kind of describing it, or the next steps that they're about to take, and kind of hope that it's enough, and that, or claiming that it is going to be enough. At one point, I think it's in the last episode, maybe even the one before that, I think it might have been the last episode, Nov is really, really quite sure about this approach, right? He's really quite laid back. It's almost kind of laissez-faire in that sense. It's just, it's like, they came in for this job, and yeah, it's just going down, it's super easy. Now the thing is, as incredible or formidable and impressive as they might be, both Nov and Morel, they'll get a reality check at some point. They simply are. And, I've alluded to this in past discussions in terms of, some of the approach, in terms of handling Killua, right? And, just their belief on the matter, and, just them not even knowing the things that Killua has seen and experienced and faced at point blank range almost, right? And still live to kind of, fight on to, just kind of be in the mix still. They'll get their reality check, perhaps soon enough, right? Because at this point, you've got all three of the King's Guard present, right? They're at play now, all three of them. And listen, folks, I'm making an effort here, and I'm going to use these names. I like the names that they all have, really unique names. On one end, of course, there's a simplicity of names like Knuckle and Shoot and Palm, right? But then, on this side, you've got these really unique names that might actually have some really interesting origins, right? Possibly Egyptian origin at that, especially Neferpito's name. I'm pretty sure, I'm about 90% sure there's got to be some inspiration there, or origins of it are probably rooted in, Egyptian folklore or history in general. But Neferpito, I've got that down, of course. That was, I've had the most time with Neferpito, right? But in comparison to Neferpito's screen time, I haven't seen much of FILMBuFF, right? This is the second time I see him, but, it is some appearance. This is actually an incredible scene, an incredible reveal for both the third King's Guard and the reintroduction, the resurrection of Kite. But much more on that in a bit. Of course, I'll have a full section focusing on just the presentation of that, right? And just the whole reanimation aspect of it. And, you've also got Neferpito. Her reaction, I think, is really quite telling here. You can actually extract quite a bit. In my opinion, you can take quite a bit from her just being quite bored, right? She's not excited, but I see Kite right there, right? Reanimated. But again, let me kind of, cut it off there. I'll come back to it. I don't want to do like little segments. I'll do a full segment on that. Again, one of the standout moments, not only in this arc, in the Chimera Ant arc, that right there is one of the best scenes in the entire anime. Oh my God, that's just beautiful. Right down to the score, the incredible score, right? Again, it's really closely attached to FILMBuFF, who's playing it himself. Okay, I'm getting excited. I'll come back to that. But, a third and final King's Guard is now here, right? And he is perhaps even if he might look a little bit simple in his design, he might be the most unique of them all. Because I simply cannot see a distinct animalistic feature, right? Like the hybrid aspect of it, I'm not seeing it yet. Maybe, you know, once he turns around, maybe once I see more of his legs, maybe, I don't know. But, you know, this is a unique character design in terms of, you know, the whole hybrid aspect of it, right? He's almost kind of like devilish in his appearance, right? That, you know, the really red or maroon skin color, skin tone. But his name, yeah, his name is quite the mouthful, isn't it? You know, that's the first reaction I had. You know, back around the time, I mean, not back around the time, it's only a few episodes ago, around the time FILMBuFF makes his first appearance, and he tells Neferpito that, you know, the third King's Guard is imminent, right? He said the name there. I didn't give it a shot then. But, you know, I get actually two different takes on it. A simple take on it from a character themselves, right? You've got Neferpito calling him Yuppie. Really, yeah, really quite simple, really quite easy. But, you know, I was a little bit more interested in the full name, right? And he said it again, and I really like the flow of it. FILMBuFF said it again. And yeah, you know, I really like I just like the sound of it. So I'm really going to use that name rather than Yuppie, right? Mon Titty Yuppie. You know, in the middle, you kind of just bring in titty, right? Mon Titty Yuppie, Mon Titty Yuppie. So once you kind of break it down, it's really quite easy to get a handle on it, right? Mon Titty Yuppie, Mon Titty Yuppie, Mon Titty Yuppie. So yeah, you know, I'm really quite happy to see the third one show up as well. But you know, it's now that all three of them are here, all three of them are present, you know, of course, there's just the one left, the king himself. And you see that the queen is really close to term at this point, really close. And his arrival is just imminent, right? And all of this kind of goes right back to the chairman, right? And his declaration right at the conclusion of this episode: I'm not sure I can accomplish this mission without sacrificing someone, right? That's a bit of a, you know, not a twist, but a bit of like a statement moment, isn't it? Now, you know, before I actually kind of try to take a stab at, you know, who he could possibly mean, I don't think he actually meant someone specifically, more so as a whole, that, you know, the tactics that might be required, it might require, you know, a bit of a sacrifice, right? But, you know, listen, that's just kind of looking at it at the surface level, right? And, you know, it's okay to look at it at the surface level. And I am going to, you know, look at that possibility as well, you know, his meaning, or the meaning behind, you know, sacrificing someone, right? You don't even have to take it literally, right? It could be something a bit beyond that. But yeah, going back to that point I was making about, you know, Netero kind of thinking to himself, you know, a lot of times he'll be looking to the ground. He'll kind of look up, quite a muted reaction to Nav and Morel, or, you know, them just kind of speaking of the plans, the upcoming plans. And it happened again here, right? He hangs up the phone call, and yeah, once again, he's kind of deep in thought. Now, listen, my take on this is that once he clocked Neferpito, once he understood the level, truly understood the level, being, you know, right there, really close by, close proximity, I think at that point, you know, more so than Nav and Morel, I think the chairman truly understands, or understood, the magnitude of the challenge ahead of them, right? The threat ahead of them, right? He can kind of scale it. I think someone like Neferpito, sorry, not Neferpito, Netero can scale it. He's seen, he's felt someone like Neferpito and her presence, and, you know, just the things she might be capable of. I think, you know, he's kind of surmised that, okay, so, you know, there's you know, more of them, right? There's going to be two more of them at least. And I'm sure he's felt their presence by now, right? Or hold on. Yeah, you know, I'm kind of thinking, do they know? No, I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Chairman's in the pocket dimension at the moment, so maybe he hasn't sensed. Maybe he hasn't sensed FILMBuFF, and then of course, you know, the recently born Mon Titty Yuppie, right? Though, you know, he was outside around the time FILMBuFF showed up on the scene, but again, you know, even Neferpito was taken by surprise. Right? Even she couldn't clock his presence. So I don't know. But it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, they've been briefed. They know about the structure, right? The ant structure, the hierarchy, and all of that. So they know that there is the king's guards and all of that. He knows, okay, there's two more like Neferpito, right?
perhaps even stronger than Neferpito. I'm not sure yet, right? The thing is, I haven't seen that much of FILMBuFF just yet. I've seen a really unique side of him, really specific side of him, but I haven't seen the things he's actually capable of. I mean, to an extent, I have. But I mean more so in terms of, the aggressive approach, right? The monstrous, abilities that he might have in comparison to, in addition to someone like Neferpito, right? Who's an absolute monster out there. She truly is. And then, of course, now, the newly born Montiti, right? Of course, looking at his, you're kind of going back to, his actual look. Yeah, he does end up being a bit of the bruiser, right? The muscle, if you will, right? But here, the thing is, don't get it twisted, folks. I'm not saying that's all he is. I've seen enough of this anime at this point. I've seen more than enough of this arc at this point to know that there's certainly more than meets the eye with these Chimera ants and just characters in general in this anime. So, yeah, you can kind of apply the same to Shoot, right? That's another really surprising moment right at the beginning, right? Now I knew that he's going to have his own shortcomings as well. That's one of the main reasons him and Knuckle are still a part of this challenge and not in the NGL. But I didn't expect it to be that, right? But it is, right? And of course, it's worth discussing and exploring in a bit. But Montiti, right? Even though at this moment he feels really quite almost robotic, kind of even similar to Android 16 from Dragon Ball, right? I don't know, now that I'm seeing Android 16, yeah, it could be kind of cool if he had a similar arc to someone like Android 16, let's see, maybe there is a little bit of inspiration there, maybe not, but in my mind, yeah, it feels a little bit similar, at least, in the build up. And it's a trio there as well, 16, 17, and 18, right? And 17 and 18 kind of do not physically resemble Neferpito and FILMBuFF, but there's some similar mannerisms, right? But yeah, I almost said Android 16. Montiti, I'm sure, he's going to be full of surprises as well, right? So I'm excited for that. I'm excited for the arrival of all of them at this point. But I'm certainly hoping for a bit more screen time for FILMBuFF and then of course Montiti as well, right? Before the king shows up. But the thing is, that is imminent as well. But yeah, going back to the chairman and that ending, it's really quite a fantastic ending in the sense that, of course, visually it looks brilliant, doesn't it? But I feel that as far as foreshadowing goes, there's some interesting things there to be looked at. Right? I mean, first of all, you look at the presentation, like I said, beautiful presentation, the collage and like all the big players, right? And then of course the head honcho, the captain of the ship himself, right? Center stage by the end of it, making that declaration. So to me, it almost kind of felt like, okay, it's once again establishing, oh, these are the major players, at least from this side, the human side, right? And beyond that, it felt like these are the players that are going to play a major part in this arc, right? So, in a sense, it's almost not, it doesn't completely confirm that, all of them are going to show up there anyways at some point, because, I've already kind of stated that I believe they are going to show up at some point. All of them are going to have a part to play in this arc. Of course, even if Gon and Killua come up short, and there's a really good chance that they are going to come up short against Knuckle and perhaps even Shoot. Because listen, even though he himself has his own shortcomings that need to be addressed and overcome, he's still going to be someone that's going to be really quite similar to Knuckle in terms of ability, right? At the base level, both of them have ability, as Morel also confirms once again, in that little bet that they put together, right? Even that, there's so many really interesting moments. There's like these pockets of interesting moments throughout this episode. The bet itself is a really quite a unique scene, isn't it? Especially in the manner of its presentation by the end of it. It kind of cuts off at one point as Nov takes a bit of an interest in this bet, right? And he has an interesting bet or a counter bet of his own. And it's a bet that really kind of takes Morel by surprise. Like he's really quite shocked. So, it has to be something that's a shocking bet, right? And a bet that he believes is a surefire, method to, lose that kind of money. I think he said something like, "Oh, you're essentially throwing it to the dogs, right?" And then, of course, through the really, clever, selection of dialogue there, you get quite a bit on Nov's bet as well, right? He said the chairman's a dog, right? So that gives you quite a bit, at least something to, kind of toss around in terms of possibilities. But yeah, it's a really cool scene, or sequence rather, because it cuts to a wide shot, and it's a beautiful shot as well, isn't it? Them on that cliff. And then, right at the conclusion of that, scene, of that frame, the audio kind of comes back in. It's the ending of something Nov is saying, right? And then, of course, you get Morel's reaction to it. But yeah, I'll come back to that in a bit, of course. But let's kind of go back to the point that brought me here about, Shoot being just as, impressive as Knuckle, perhaps, in terms of combat ability and, how they kind of match up against Gon and Killua, or how Gon and Killua match up against them, rather. But yeah, at this point, it feels like even at their best, right, and at their fully rested, Gon and Killua still might come up short, right? And the thing is, Bisky's take on all of this, her own internal monologue, like I said, I kind of got cut off because of the scene that followed up of Palm. But, I was about to say that she has a complete understanding for the thought process behind this really unique challenge that the chairman has put together, right? In terms of addressing each person's shortcomings, right? Them understanding it themselves, So, to her, it's not really even a failure if they don't end up beating Knuckle and Shoot, if they don't end up getting those tiles. So Bisky certainly believes that, regardless of the final outcome, it's quite the learning opportunity, right? That, they are going to grow from this, right? And she's really hoping that they themselves can recognize the things that they need, right? And then, of course, try to overcome it as well. She wants them to understand it out there. So yeah, as alluded to before as well on multiple occasions, Bisky has an understanding for the old man, right? The chairman, Netero, and how he functions, right? The gambler, apparently. But also Nov claims to be a bit of a gambler himself, right? So that also plays a part in his actual bet. It's quite a big bet, quite a outlandish bet, right? If you look at Morel's actual reaction to it, there's this really cool or significant line of dialogue there. I hope it will be enough to teach them that which they lack, right? That which they need. So she thinks, or hopes at least, that, them potentially having a go at Knuckle at full strength, fully rested, that could drive on Knuckle's full potential, or him at full strength. Listen, there's already signs here that Knuckle is still not open to going all out, because listen, let's not beat around the bush. If that man goes all out, I don't know, man. I think Knuckle himself knows if he goes all out, Gon could be in big trouble, right? Big trouble. The thing is, it's so clear that he's still so open to helping him out, in the middle of that. And, Bisky's probably picked up on this as well. You'll see him kind of attack Gon, right? He'll show up behind him, but he'll make sure to still tell Gon, behind you, fool, right? He'll say it in a manner that might seem like, oh, okay, he's just saying things, right? He's kind of playing with him or messing with him. But no, he gave him a heads up. And you see almost immediately in Gon's reaction, right? At first he's shocked. He's like, oh, okay, he ended up behind me. But then he kind of gets himself ready for that, right? He braces himself for the impact. I mean, it's still quite the impact, it really takes out of Gon. But imagine if he didn't brace himself, right? And he's only able to brace himself because someone like Knuckle is, openly helping him out there, giving him a heads up before he actually lands the blow. And the blow itself is not even at full strength, yet it still packs a punch, a mighty punch, right? At one point, Gon's like, it just rattled my insides, or, all of my body's shaking. Like I said, it's insane that after just a few episodes, I just love this character so much. Knuckle, I do. And I'm sure I'm going to like Shoot as well. But yeah, not only is he giving him heads up during the fight itself, the conclusion of that segment, at least for this episode, is him outlining his rock, paper, scissors ability, right? And outlining that, okay, it's, look, it's a cool ability, but, it's got its flaws. He thinks it's really, really quite flawed, actually, in, in combat, in one-on-one battle, right? Because, it can be really quite effective in a really unique and specific situation. Like I stated, the dodgeball game, there he had all the time, right? To charge up, to power up and all of that. And then of course, out of the two flaws that he mentioned, that's easily one of them, right? That's a really clear cut flaw, the first one at least out of the two, right? Look at that, he's outlining it for him. He's like, okay, I'm gonna tell you, man, there's two issues here. You've got to think of something to kind of bypass those flaws, right? Kind of use a different approach perhaps, right? And I'm sure Gon can probably do something about that. But yeah, one of them certainly has to be the charge up aspect of it, right? No one's going to just let him do it, right? No one's going to do it. He even tells him straight up. He tells him, if you do that, I'm gonna attack you, right? And that's exactly how anyone else is going to approach that. So he's giving him a real life example already throughout their own encounter. But the second one's not as clear cut, but there's a few possibilities. I suppose one of them could be that he kind of has to be in close proximity to land at least two of them, right? The enhancer component of it, right? The rock, the transmuter component of it, right? The scissors that I saw, a few episodes ago, him cutting down that one Chimera ant, the one with the arms. But there's also the emitter component of it. Sorry, not scissors, paper. So that one specifically doesn't really require close proximity, right? So, but the thing is, Knuckle hasn't seen that yet. He's only seen one of them, really, Rock, right? So let's see how this fight plays out, because it's essentially the last chance at this point. So yeah, I'm really quite excited to see the continuation of this into the next episode. It could also just be as simple as, it just takes up too much out of him, right? One attack takes up too much out of him. That could be one of the other, flaws of it. Now, taking it back to the chairman, right, and his declaration, and just the, the visual presentation of that, like I said, first of all, brilliant, beautiful, but also, kind of like a chess mat, right? All the major players, all the major pieces. Now the question is, who could end up being a pawn, right? Again, that's kind of looking at it really quite specifically, if you are to look at it as someone really quite specific, just one person. But I don't think it's as simple as that. I don't think he actually has anyone in mind, unless of course, there's only one person he can know for sure that, that be completely on board. There's only one person he can control, isn't it? That's himself, right? That's the one and only person out of all of them that he knows for sure, right? Because you know yourself best. He knows for sure that, he'd be open to it. He might feel the need to do it himself, right? So that's certainly a possibility. But, I also kind of looked at it possibly as, okay, if it's not just, literally one person, it could also mean that, it could just be a collective sacrifice, that he might have to end up sacrificing all of them, all of us, essentially. The problem could be that big. And, that kind of takes me back to my point, right? That I think he's really clocked at this point, the level of this threat, the imminent king and all of that. I think he truly understands that, okay, this is going to require sacrifices, right? Big ones at that. So he's thinking long term. He's thinking of, end game type stuff at this point already. But the one thing I feel really confident about is that he didn't actually have anyone specific from, that table of characters that I saw. I don't think he actually had anyone on mind, as, oh, okay, this is a person that I might have to sacrifice, oh, this is someone I could use. I honestly do not think that's at play. Listen, maybe it'll surprise me, but that's my read on the chairman up until this point. I don't think he's that type. I'm not saying he'd be opposed to some questionable tactics. And listen, it might require some questionable tactics and quite a questionable, ambiguous approach at some point. Again, if you think of endgame type stuff here, I'm not saying he's not capable of that, but I don't feel that he's the type who'd actually, take one of these characters, one of these people, and actually, actively think about sacrificing them. But again, could be famous last words, right? Maybe he does end up doing something like that, or he ends up, executing a plan that might actually end up getting someone killed, and he knowingly goes through with it. But yeah, the more I think of it, I'm really liking that idea I brought up of him possibly just even speaking of himself, right? It's kind of like a curveball, isn't it? And it's interesting, isn't it? Because, I think I stated a couple of episodes ago that, knuckle is essentially a baseball term, isn't it? So, it's interesting that I'm using another, baseball term here, curveball. Curveball in the sense that, okay, it's, at least on the surface level, it's trying to present it as, oh, okay, these are the major players, all the pieces on the chessboard on their side at least, and, one of them could end up being a pawn. Right. But, if you kind of dig a little bit deeper, there's a few more possibilities. But, if I really think about it, it's actually pretty fucking crazy that, if it actually ends up being that possibility of him just, speaking of himself, or just understanding that, oh, I might have to be the one who has to do something here, take some kind of final action that only he might be capable of, perhaps. Right. It's the chairman. It's Netero. Right. Yes. Nav believes he's being quite modest. He's listen, I mentioned before, I'm sure I'm going to see some serious shit once he steps out there, proper. Right now, he's still kind of in his own little training arc, right? Kind of, he kind of pretty much specifies that, yeah, he's a little bit rusty, right? So I was kind of on the right track on that in the last discussion. Them kind of sending the ants to him, and also him getting to gauge the level of these ants as well. These are just nothing to him at this point. He just cuts through them quite easily. But let's think about that possibility for a second. If indeed he might mean himself, that right there kind of almost tells you his understanding of the threat and the imminent king himself, and the threat that he might kind of, prove to be. So, if it is potentially kind of hinting at or alluding to or foreshadowing, Netero himself being, the person that has to be sacrificed or must sacrifice himself, that right there tells you quite a bit about the king, or the threat of the king as well, or the threat of the ants as a whole, right? As a unit, the king and the king's guard. Yeah, that's certainly one of the possibilities. And also, let me kind of specify my thoughts on, why exactly I don't think, it's really a strong possibility that he's actually speaking of, one of these people, one of these, kids even, as far as, the pawn that must be sacrificed at some point. To me, people like Gon and Killua and Pawn, Knuckle and Shoot, these are, up and coming hunters, the future, right? I just don't think he'd even think about, actually knowingly, letting any of them die, using them in that manner. Now, listen, Nav and Morel, I mentioned a little bit earlier that they might get a reality check. They are going to get a reality check at some point. And, at some point, down the line, perhaps they are going to be in a tricky situation. Thing is, down the line, deep into the arc, perhaps, and deep into the fight itself, there could be moments that, some of these characters, or one of them, might even understand that, okay, to execute a plan, maybe, a certain part of it might require them to, sacrifice themselves. So, it doesn't even have to be like Netero might actually throw someone under the bus. Again, I don't think he's even thinking like that. It could actually end up being something like, okay, I'm open to it. Someone like Nava Morel actually being open to kind of going down with the ship. But, kind of using that analogy, it kind of fits someone like Netero perfectly as well, right? I called him the captain of the ship earlier. Maybe the captain of the ship might have to go down himself, right? At some point, maybe he's already kind of accepted that, There's a lot to think about here. And finally, it's essentially almost kind of like a confirmation that, Netero does expect all of them to play a part, right? So, even if Gon and Killua don't end up, beating Knuckle and Shoot and getting those tiles, regardless of all of that, they're going to play a part anyways. And, it appears that Netero certainly feels that all of them are going to be playing a part. And of course, us, the audience, also knows, right? It's Gon and Killua. They are going to play a part. Even if they do end up losing to Knuckle and Shoot, they're going to be a part of that arc. They have to be a part of that arc for many reasons, of course. Even beyond them just, kind of being the protagonists that us, the audience, is following for the most part. And, one of those reasons is, of course, the inevitable reunion. At this point, it's all but confirmed that indeed I'll get a Kite and Gon reunion. And listen, let's not forget Killua. Killua is going to have to see Kite in that state as well. I mean, you know, I say state, but I don't know, man. It's tricky, isn't it? It's tricky. I'll probably need a bit more, but you know, at this point, he's certainly back. You know, at the base level, Kite is back, right? Kind of. You know, he's been reanimated at the least. The body that the individual that was named Kite once upon a time, I suppose, used to utilize, right? The body itself is certainly back at action or back in action, even if it is being controlled, right? Like a puppet. And in that sense, it's now literally a plaything, isn't it? For Neferpito. But again, like I said, you know, it's almost as if, you know, how cats sometimes really get attached to a plaything, or a plaything or a toy, right? But then they move on, you know, they kind of lose interest sometimes. You know, that's kind of the demeanor that's on display or on showcase for someone like Neferpito in this episode, at least, right? Given the fact that she was really, really quite excited to, you know, kind of relive that feeling over and over again. And of course, that includes, or, you know, at the base level or foundationally, that has to mean that you have to bring Kite back. But yeah, going back to my point, Killua is also going to have to come across this Kite, right? Killua is the last person to see Kite alive. And he's going to have to see him like this after he had to get out of there. After all of that shame and embarrassment that he kind of goes through all night, trying to escape from that situation and blaming himself, essentially, right, for the death of Kite, even though he could have done nothing ultimately, right? It was essentially the only solution. Otherwise, again, you know, both Gon and Killua would have been dead, long dead at this point. So yeah, you know, let's not forget Killua having to see Kite in that state as well at some point, right? It's going to affect him as well. But, you know, Gon, oh my God, you know, Gon's reaction is, yeah, that's something I'm really, I don't know, man, not excited for, but something that is going to be quite fascinating, intriguing to say the least. How exactly is he going to take it all in, man? To see Kite in that state. I mean, the thing is, even I haven't seen Kite in that state just yet. I've just seen his reanimated body. And of course, I'll discuss the connotations of that scene itself. And just, you know, the puppet master. But, you know, there's a puppet master behind the puppet master in the sense that it appears to be Neferpito's Hatsu at play, right? You know, that monstrosity that's controlling Kite in essentially a show, right? A stage play, a marionette ballet, right? With live music and everything. It really is a brilliant scene. It really is, man. I mean, yes, of course, it's shocking, but brilliant. But going back to Nov's counter bet, you know, he said them. I believe he said 1,000,000 Jenny on them once it kind of cuts back to him, right? Right at the end of that conversation or that line of dialogue that it purposely cuts out. So yeah, you know, it kind of eliminates the possibility of him just betting on Palm, right? Because he said them, 1,000,000 on them. Now, could he mean Palm, Gon, and Killua, right? That possibly could be it. But the thing is, he knows enough about Knuckle and Shoot, and he knows that they are quite capable, at least as far as combat abilities and all of that. So, you know, he's much like Moral, he must be quite confident that, yeah, you know, Knuckle and Shoot have a really good chance of you know, coming out on top in this challenge. So, you know, if you look at Morel's reaction, his really shocked reaction, it could be something like him just betting that, listen, you know, much like how I felt that Netro just feels that all of them are going to show up anyways, you know, he might be thinking the same thing, right? That all of them might show up at some point anyways, right? So maybe that's a part of his bet, right? They don't have to all show up together unless that is his bet. I don't know. You know, they cannot show up all together. That's just not going to happen, right? So ultimately, you know, perhaps he's just thinking, you know, sooner or later, all of them are going to be required anyways, right? It could be something along those lines. But yeah, let me kind of go back to the scene now. Let's kind of go back to it proper. It's brilliant. It is a phenomenal scene. It really truly is. I mean, just the beginning of the scene itself, the establishing shot of the nest. Oh, that is a standout frame I mean, that is just beautiful stuff, man. I mean, listen, the art direction, the storyboarding, the animation itself, and then again, specific character animation or character acting animation as well is just top tier stuff at this point. It really is. But yeah, the establishing shot of that nest, and then it cuts to much more of an intimate shot of the nest. That right there, that frame right there is one of the most beautiful frames of the entire anime for me. The thing is, it's crazy how many times, they do show me the exterior of the nest, right? Again, mainly as an establishing shot, but it's crazy how it kind of keeps it fresh. I never get sick of these shots of the nest, right? Like I said, it's really quite similar to those shots of Heaven's Arena, right? These monolithic structures that it always has to cut back to. But yeah, the nest and just these shots of the nest almost feel like an iconic component of this arc already. They do. But the structure of the scene itself, it's quite a jam-packed scene in a sense, right? It's got a lot going on, right? It's the arrival of the final King's Guard. It's the revelation, right? The shocking the shocking resurrection of Kite, right? And the really surprising reaction of someone like Neferpito as well. And, it's almost like, the arts and medicine coming together as well, right? And I say that because, you see the FILMBuFF, the elegant FILMBuFF, brings quite a bit of class to the king's court, like I mentioned, right? A bit of elegance to the king's court. And that was clear right in his first appearance, right? So you see that he's really quite cultured artistically, right? He's quite a prodigious violin player as well. I mean, I don't know how the hell he acquired that instrument, but he got it. He got it somehow, right? He manifested it somehow, or I don't know, man. It's there. And then I mentioned medicine kind of loosely, I suppose, because of Neferpito and the interest that she's taken in resurrecting Kite. Again, to relive that incredible dreamlike scenario over and over again, right? But it appears that she wasn't quite able to recreate that dreamlike scenario, again, based on her really disinterested reaction to all of it. He's right there, Kite's right there, but again, it's not quite Kite, is it? And it looks like Neferpito also understands that. She's realized, yeah, it's not quite the same, is it? He's just a shell, right? He's reanimated. He's essentially being controlled, and it's just not the same as actually being across the person that was Kite, the person that used to be alive. So, to me, it almost kind of functions as a confirmation as well. Her reaction to this, her disinterest in this, that it's simply not the Kite that all of us used to know, that she used to know for a bit, right? For an incredible night that they shared. It might not have been incredible from Kite's perspective, but it was from Neferpito's. Again, it was her first. And also continuing on my point about medicine, you see that she had that whole lab set up, right? And she had these compounds that she understands, right? I think she says something like, I'll make this a little bit stronger. And she's holding something in her hand. And again, almost immediately after being born and running into Rameau and who's the other one? Rameau and Peggy, of course. Yes. She hits the books. Upon finding out about Nen and all of that, she hits the books, she hits a library, and they've got quite the collection. That's another head scratcher of a moment. How exactly did they come across all of those books? And they seem to have quite the collection as well. I'd love to be in there. So yeah, she's just got a knack for this. She's drawn to all of this knowledge, right? Again, you see that she performs a bit of a surgery as well, right? Actually picking at Pokel's brains, or his brain rather, sorry. So essentially she's got a PhD in the debaucherous arts, right? But also let's not forget the almost supernatural element of her Hatsu as well, right? Maybe in this case specifically, it kind of feels supernatural in comparison to most, given, just the nature of it. It's a reanimated body moving, And it's not clunky, maybe still not as graceful as kite used to be, but it's still not, jarring or clunky. It might be a little bit jarring to see it, of course, but it's not clunky. He's still, this reanimated body is still pretty goddamn formidable. Now, the thing is, there is a distinction to be made here, or, there's another possibility here. Maybe it's not the actual body, maybe it's specifically her Hatsu moving that body. So, maybe it's not actually even the body that's been reanimated. It's the Hatsu that's controlling the body. I mean, in a sense, that is it being reanimated. But of course, it's a puppet. That imagery is really quite deliberate, right? In establishing, okay, this new kite, this reanimated kite is not in control at all, right? It appears to be all Neferpito's Hatsu at play. There's also this possibility that perhaps it's a bit of a learning lesson for Neferpito, kind of understanding, really truly understanding life and death. That, no matter how much she tried, she wasn't really able to bring back that person, right? And, that could explain, why exactly she's so, I don't know, disinterested, just almost kind of like bored, almost really quite down, It really is not the reaction I was expecting from Neferpito seeing Kite again, but it also makes sense, right? Because it's not the same Kite, is it? And she understands it. She understands that there's something missing. She understands that there's a key component missing. And this is also a concept that Full Metal Alchemist explores, right? The missing piece. And I'm speaking of the concept of the soul, right? And the role it plays in the buildup of a person. The crucial role it plays. So yeah, I think perhaps Neferpito also has a better understanding now for certain things. But also, speaking of FILMBuFF, listen, as classy as he is, as elegant as he is, right? And as suave as he is, I'm sure I'll get to see the nasty side at some point as well. I'm sure he's going to have his own chance to scare the shit out of some of these characters on the other side, right? By just displaying his abilities and his presence. And then, of course, you've got the stoic Montete Yuppie as well. Now let's kind of switch back to the other side of things. Gon and Killua, right? There's an interesting moment earlier on. Gon is, he's a little bit puzzled about the fact that, okay, Knuckle is clearly quite impressive, more than good enough. Hell, he could be a match for Kite. That's insane. That is insane. I mean, yeah, even if Gon and Killua have showcased a rapid progression, with the Ren training, it's still just not going to be enough, is it? Listen, this is someone comparable to Kite. And this is according to Gon as well. And Gon's been around Kite. He understands, right? He understands now. He truly understands. Both Gon and Killua understand the level of Knuckle, right? But, he didn't quite understand, why exactly he wasn't taken. But, of course, almost kind of as expected, Killua has an immediate understanding for it, that it's a mental block. It's something else, right? It doesn't always have to mean that, it's your combat ability that might be a speed bump. Everyone's unique. And I love that about this, that even accomplished or really impressive hunters, people like Knuckle and Shoot have their own shortcomings and, speed bumps that they kind of have to get over, right? Yeah, but the thing about Killua understanding this almost immediately, it just means that, okay, of course, Killua is internally thinking about his own shortcoming. What exactly is his speed bump and the things that he has to understand, again, as Bisky spoke of it, or she thought of it, at least, the scene I was kind of speaking of earlier, right? To recognize, to identify the shortcomings, right? The thing that they need. I'm sure Killua's already thinking about that. So it'll be interesting to see once, both Gon and Killua do have an understanding for their own shortcomings, right? How exactly they kind of handle it. For someone like Shoot, it's his indecisiveness, isn't it? The narrator is really quite, not harsh, it's the truth, perhaps. He called him a coward, right? That's not, that wasn't the term I was thinking of or thinking of using. But yeah, ultimately all of that, kind of adds up to that. But yeah, really quite indecisive. If he really wanted to at that point, he could have easily taken out Gon and Killua. He easily could have taken those tiles. And the thing is, he keeps reassuring himself as well. This is it. This is a perfect chance, right? It's like he can't even give himself an out. right? He specifies to himself, right, internally, oh, I don't sense anyone, right? This is the perfect chance. And he reminds himself, anytime he has a plan in mind, he executes it to perfection, really kind of building himself up as the real deal, or reassuring himself that he is a real deal. There's a line of dialogue, when I take someone down or, a target down, I'm always deliberate and thorough, right? These are all things that he has to remind himself. And at the end of the day, there's only one thing left to do. Take the final step, pull the trigger, right? He could not do it. The man's shaking. He ends up crying. See, I'm not sure if that's for comedic effect or if he actually legitimately is shedding tears at that, crippling anxiety and, fear of, kind of taking the final step, right? Taking action. So yeah, all of a sudden Shoot is also quite intriguing as well, isn't he? And yeah, his approach certainly has some similarities to Killua's approach, right? So yeah, that's yeah. Let's see. Right now I've only seen. They did kind of team up on Knuckle. Both Gon and Killua. It was a great piece of animation as well in the last episode. But yeah, at this point it's just Gon against Knuckle. So that leaves Shoot and Killua. So that's also imminent. Essentially, next episode or maybe the episode after that, depending on how long things kind of take. So yeah, Shoot's approach is going to be really interesting to see, right? If there even is an approach at the end of the day. That's still a bit of a question, actually. That's a bit of a question mark. And kind of finishing up my point about the shortcomings and all of that, and Killua specifically, might be thinking about that as well now, given the fact that he has an understanding for other people's shortcomings in this, in this setup. Knuckle being the example or the point of discussion there. Bisky knows. People like Bisky know. I discussed it earlier at length that, yeah, she has a complete understanding for the setup here, the chairman's setup. People like the chairman know. So yeah, it'll be interesting because at this point, it doesn't seem clear cut that Killua knows about this specific shortcoming just yet, right? But I'm sure, the next few episodes are going to explore that. And also, let's not forget Palm. Right? She's certainly quite present in this episode, certainly keeping a close eye on Gon and Killua's progression. And, she has a complete understanding for it as well, as Bisky clocked. Yeah. Palm, just fascinating character. Anytime she's on screen, it's just like, first of all, again, from a production standpoint, all of these shots of Palm are just stunning. But she claims at lunch that, again, she prepared. It's been confirmed. So yeah, she's got a knack for that for sure. But yeah, she tells him that I'm nearly over the edge at this point, right? So if you run at once before it's too late, I probably won't chase you down and kill you, right? But of course, our boys are never going to run. Gon tells her once again, that's not something I'm going to do. But of course, instead, he tries to calm her down. And again, apparently he's become quite good at this, according to Killua. And then, of course, Bisky had something else to say. I'll get to that in a bit. But yeah, he assures her or reassures her that they'll get it done. They'll get it done. And he makes the pinky promise. Right, I've seen the pinky promise before. It's really quite a cute segment. He makes that promise with Mito-san. It's their thing essentially, but he did it here. And then the final part of it, the kiss component of it, it gets quite a distinct reaction out of Palm. So it's certainly going there now, isn't it? Yeah, once again, this is yet another person that Gon's won over. But this is perhaps not the type of. Not the type, or certainly not the age group that you want to see, kind of react in this manner to Gon. But she reacted in that manner. And, I kind of gave my thoughts on it initially. And I kind of also said, okay, let me see more of this. And I've seen more of it now, and she's reacted in that manner. So, yeah, it's a little bit dicey. It is. Let's not beat around the bush. It is. And you see that once again, Togashi is not afraid to push this, right? To take this angle, right? There's certainly hints of it. With Hisoka, strong hints of it rather. And now once again, you have someone that's far too old to be, having that kind of reaction to someone like Gon, a young kid. Yeah, but listen, much like how I think that, there is a bit of nuance there for, Hisoka's approach, right? There's other things at play. I think the same could be applicable to someone like Palm. Right. But listen, at this point, I can't say anything like, she's attracted to the potential and it doesn't matter the age. Right. It could be an old person, someone like Netero. It could be a young person, someone like Gon or Killua. it doesn't matter. He's attracted to, you know, the potential, and of course that has quite a distinct effect on him as well. But then of course, you know, there's certain moments that are just straight out him checking them out, right? I can't even say anything like that for Palm, not as of yet at least. So yeah, it's dicey. It's certainly quite dicey. And of course Bisky's picked up on it as well. Yeah, so again, let's see how it all plays out, and how far Togashi kind of pushes this. He's not afraid to push it. He's not, you know, and you kind of have to think about it, right? You know, why exactly does Togashi feel the need to include this? And I think I've stated it before, but he's not afraid to make the audience uncomfortable. He's not, right? He pushes it for sure. He's open to it, more than open to it. But yeah, I think that should do it for this one, folks. If you enjoyed that, consider dropping a like, consider dropping some comments, give me your thoughts. If you are interested in early access or timer-based full length or full opacity, consider checking out the Patreon page and, you know, potentially supporting the channel in the process as well. The links are in the description and the pinned comment. Please, I implore you to really read the tier descriptions and really understand the things you are pledging to. There's also things like social media, if that's your thing. Right then, thank you so much for joining me, folks, and thank you for your time, because time is precious. It really is. And I do hope to see you again soon for the next one. Until then, take it easy.